Hi, everyone. Welcome to our fourth Hangout on the Air. My name is Jeff Moore. I'm a lead recruiter here at Google, working in our Cambridge office, and would like to introduce a couple of my dear friends from Chicago, Ben and Fitz. Ben, why don't you introduce yourself, and then we'll get going.
Oh, sure. My name's Ben Collins-Sussman, and as Jeff mentioned, Fitz and I were the first couple of engineers in the Chicago office, and now we are engineering managers, in fact. So it's a lot of fun.
Career growth.
Yeah.
And Fitz?
Hi, I'm Brian Fitzpatrick, and I started the office here with Ben, 6 years and change ago, and I work on all sorts of different things at Google. Ben and I started in open source, and now I'm doing data liberation and free speech and that sort of thing. Yeah, that's right, Data Liberation Front.
It's my favorite coffee cup. Awesome. Well, guys, thank you in advance for joining. I really appreciate it. I have it at home. I love it.
There you go.
Seriously. Thank you again for joining. The topic today is sort of transitioning to the workforce and sort of like, people that are graduating from school, what do you need to do to get prepared for your first job? And what I talked about in the blog was some stuff that's like super basic, right? Like finish your degree. You got a job offer? Don't fail out now. Bad idea, right? Not cool. Stop interviewing. Don't accept a job and then a few months later call and be like, so I'm actually taking this other job. Just, not cool. I actually could list the people that have done that to me in my career, 15 years ago. It's right there. It's just a bad karma. And then, some of it is little stuff, just sort of, be ready, right? Get your apartment in order, get your cable set up. When you show up to work, be ready to work and have brushed up on whatever skills you're going to need. And, be ready to work, but enjoy those last few months of being a student. And, would love to just sort of get, what you guys think are sort of a couple of things that someone can do when they're starting a new job, especially on the engineering front when you're joining a new software engineering team. What can you do to be ready? Fitz, I'll let you start. Can't hear you, Fitz. I think you're having technical difficulties.
I muted myself, so I wasn't making noise. Sorry about that.
No,
yeah, this whole computer stuff is really confusing. So I think that there's a million things you can prepare for, and then there's a million things you can't prepare for. But like you said, I think finishing your degree is the most important thing. The analogy I always use is that if you don't get a degree, you immediately just close a whole bunch of doors to yourself. And at Google, that's one of the really important things, that you have at least a bachelor's degree. But I think you have to be willing to try a lot of different things. Sometimes you get your dream job right out of the gate, and sometimes you don't. But in many cases, you're not going to get that brain surgeon job right out of college, or the perfect job that you want. I went through a whole bunch of different jobs and tried a whole bunch of different things before I figured out what I wanted to do. I was 3 years out of college before I figured out what I wanted to do with my life. And so, I tried a whole bunch of different things. I figured out what I wanted to do. Then I really threw myself into it. So, I think you've got to be willing to try different things if you're not already into what you want to do. And explore realize you're not committing yourself to a life working at one company, right? You might decide go work at a big company and decide, hey, that's what I really want to do. You might decide that you want to work at a smaller company. There's a lot of different things. So I guess it's sort of high level and vague, and it might seem obvious, but those are the most common mistakes I see with people. So when you're young, is your chance to take risks. I think it's a hard time nowadays with jobs.
Sure.
But I think you can do more things, like let's go do the startup, or let's go work here, or let's go do this sort of thing. But you got to do things to get experience.
Absolutely. Ben, what would you add to that? Yeah.
Well, in my case, I agree. Part of taking risks means trying lots of different things. And if you have the bandwidth, you can even try them simultaneously. When I was first out of school, I really was trying to choose between 2 or 3 different careers, and I was trying to do them all at once, which was interesting. But on the one hand, I took a job as an IT, sort of sysadmin job, because I was like, oh, this is the sellable skill I have. On the other hand, my buddy and I were trying to write music and sort of get into theater and make a living as composers for theater, and that meant a lot of moonlighting, right? Which I really considered a second job, which didn't pay as well. And there was a long time where I was sort of balancing the two back and forth. So this is an example of just not being afraid to pursue what interests you and be ready to experiment, as Fitz says. But on the other hand, there was a trick there. You don't want your employer to think that you're not interested or that you're not paying attention. so it is an art form to, whether you're in the theater at night or at the day job doing computers, to make it seem like that employer is the only person in the world you care about at that moment. It's
right.
A bit of a
yeah, totally agree.
Now, what would you guys say, what would you think are, sort of like first week, right? New to a job, you're showing up at the Chicago office, so to speak, and you're going to come work on data liberation. Do you guys have, some first week, obviously besides show up on time and all these sorts of crazy things, some 101. But, are there sort of like quick tips on how someone can show up and just like, at the end of the first week, you'll be like, yeah, this guy's going to be great, or this person's going to really do well? Is there stuff that jumps off the page at you?
I would say don't be shy. I don't know, is Fitz still muted there?
Yeah, no, I would. Go ahead.
I was going to say one of the patterns I see when people first start new jobs is they're scared to ask for what they need. They're so afraid of rocking the boat, or they're feeling overwhelmed about being a small fish in a giant ocean, and just like starting a school or any other place. They're afraid to actually tell their manager, well, this is what I actually need right now. And sometimes that means, hey, I need a mentor, someone who I can talk to, who maybe is your manager, maybe it's just a coworker you sit next to, but someone who officially expects you to ask questions, right? A lot of people don't get that, and they need it. The other thing that I see is a lot of time in the first week, a company will be like, hey, why don't you go investigate this thing, or go learn about this thing? And it's sort of a softball. It's sort of like oh, he's new here, we'll give him something really easy, and it turns out to almost be too easy. I find that even in the first couple of weeks of the job, you'll often see people bored. Like they were given not enough to do. I don't know. Have you seen that, Fitz?
Well, it also can be like immensely frightening. I mean, I'll tell you, my first week at Google, I was out in Mountain View at the home office, right? Sort of going through my Noogler classes, as they call them, learning about our infrastructure, learning how Google works, and that sort of thing. And I was completely distracted. Like, I was like nervous out of my mind. I'm like, oh my God, everybody's going to figure out that I don't belong here. I'm some kind of fraud, And I'm like, it was the scariest thing ever. And I was so distracted that I backed my rental car into a tow truck and tore the bumper off of it. I'm not even kidding. I went to the rental car place, and I'm like, bumper's in the back seat. Can I have another one, please? But you're absolutely right, Ben. It's you sort of have to, don't feel like you have to go out of your way to prove yourself. I think that's sort of the freshman syndrome, right? Where you're like, I'm going to show everyone how smart I am. But on the same note, you don't want to ask people. You want to find a balance between like sitting there and spinning your wheels, and asking people around you every question that comes to your mind. So there's these two things that you really need to sort of balance, I think. But a lot of it comes down to starting to put into place these the resourcefulness, I think, that you typically garner with being comfortable and understanding a place. You'll start to know, if I need to know this, I can go look over here, or that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's funny that you guys, the shy thing. I mean, I think in a place like Google, right, where we really value open collaboration and discussion, nothing is sort of figured out in the corner, right, or in Ben's basement, for example, where we really value that discussion to figure out what the right thing to do, and that just sort of having your tail tucked, being shy thing on your first day, it's natural, but at the same time, if you've got questions, you should definitely speak up. That's a pretty vital point.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And now we've got some other questions that have come through from our moderator page, and one of them, I hit on it a little bit, but would love you guys' take just about, it's from AJ. It says, I have job offers pending, but I'm still really interested in interviewing with one particular company, Google. What should I tell all the recruiters involved? I mean, I certainly know how I, as a recruiter, like to deal with that, but how do you guys feel as sort of, knowing that someone is, maybe joining your team or floating around there?
I mean, I guess you don't want to turn something down, and you want to keep all your options open as long as you can, right? So you want to keep as many options as open as possible. And you typically, even any company will say, we want a response from you by this date, right? You can usually push a little bit and flex that, right? I know Jeff doesn't want to hear this, right? But if you look, I really don't know what's going on. I really need a couple more days or something like that. But if a company gives you a drop dead date, they say, look, if you don't accept this offer by this day, you're out of here, that's a really good indicator of how you're going to be treated when you work at that company.
Totally.
And that's sort of, I would call that, personally, I'd call it a little bit of dirty pool. And I don't like that sort of thing. So I wouldn't say that you should, if it turns out that the other company, Google or otherwise, is dragging you along, you don't hear anything for weeks or months, you certainly have to make a decision. And I wouldn't, carry that on forever. But remember that you are, if you have different companies trying to hire you, it means you're a good engineer, and that these companies are going to want to hire you. So don't just give it all up just because you're afraid of some company saying no or whatever. Not if they've already made you this offer. Push back a little as hard as you can.
Ben?
I agree. There's a delicate balance about not being a slime ball, but also not letting slime ball companies abuse you, as Fitz was saying. Right?
Totally.
You don't want to say yes when you don't mean it. You don't want. On the other hand, there are some companies that really are greasy, which will manipulate you. I can think of, for example, a friend who she was applying to a job, and it was for a professorship, and usually there's a very specific time cycle when professors apply for jobs and they get accepted, just like when you're applying for universities. And there was one particular university that sort of had this sort of slightly greasy way of like recruiting people by making people apply for jobs and giving them answers much earlier than every other university. And they accepted her, but this other university wanted her too. And it was a delicate situation, right? It was kind of like she was sort of leading one university on, but sort of interviewing at the other. And you could say maybe there was a moral justification there because the first university was kind of cheating the game by recruiting ahead of everybody
so early,
else,
yeah,
expecting everyone to commit before. So sometimes there are thorny moral situations like that, but it's pretty obvious when a company is messing with you, right? And you want to be sensitive to that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. And I think that, like open communication is the best thing, especially dealing with a recruiter, right? Like, tell me what's going on. I can try and make things go faster. I can make things go slower. I want you to make a decision that makes you happy and has you pumped to join. I don't want you to join just because you feel like I talked you into it, or that kind of thing. I'd much rather have people joining that are psyched. And so, yeah, I totally agree with you guys.
Yeah, and don't hesitate if you're, I mean, we've worked with Jeff for years now at Google, and Jeff's the kind of person who I think you keep in touch with people a lot more. You reach out, you're proactive. There's a certain company that I applied to about 6.5 years ago that my recruiter was not very communicative with me, and I wound up chasing him down a bit, and I'd call him and be like, hey, what's up? And I'd email him and that sort of thing. And so don't be afraid to chase him down if you're not getting quite what you need as a level of communication.
Cool. Now I just got a question in, guys, that was asking. This is actually really relevant to the conversation about sort of once you're on board and you're sort of joining a team, what kinds of things can you do to sort of effectively join and work in like a new group of software engineers? Because, for a lot of people, they've come from academia. It's a whole new world, right, to work with a team of engineers. So are there a few tips? I know you guys have got all kinds of secret projects and stuff going on, but would love to know a few tips on that front.
Well, what do you say? I mean, at least in computer science, one of the problems that Fitz and I have always talked about is that while you learn to do your homework very well, you don't really learn to work on a team in most universities. You get very used to just doing your assignments, turning them in, you're done. Now I understand how to do this kind of programming or whatever. Right. And you get to a real environment with a team, and you're expected to know how to use all these tools like bug trackers and version control systems, and how to collaborate, how to do code reviews with other people. I mean, these are things that they don't typically teach in university, though I know there's a bit of a skew sort of going that way now, where sometimes a lot of senior projects where you have to collaborate with people. But at least I think that's the most valuable skill you can pick up if possible. And if your university doesn't offer any kind of environment where you're forced to collaborate with people and use collaborative tools, you can do it yourself just by participating in an open source project, for example, right? It's sort of a free internship is how we always talk about it. Fitz, you want to elaborate more on that?
No, I strongly agree. I think finding opportunities to really gain experience working with other people is key, because usually when your first job out of college is when you start learning that, how to work with other people. And a lot of, I think, your take on how you want to work with other people is going to come from that first job. and so, you know, I mean, a lot of it does come from, and Ben in my case was from working in the open source world. That's where I really started to learn most of my actual writing software engineering was in the open source world. And this was this model where you just sort of, the way that I got involved in a project was I came in and I just started watching the conversation going on, that sort of thing, and I started picking off things to do that nobody else wanted to do, right? I would start to read source code, and I'd find document fixes, and I'd start fixing little bugs in documentation and that sort of thing. And then I would go through and I'd find tasks that nobody wanted to do, like really grungy stuff. And I'd pick those up and do those, right? And they were, you know, they weren't anything spectacular, but everyone was really thankful. They're like, wow, this is great. This guy is like coming in, and, you know, you're not just going to come and try and pick the sweet tasks that everybody wants to work on. And so that's one way of sort of you know, getting into the groove with a team. I think one of the most challenging things of working with any sort of team of people is meshing. It's sort of like the transmission, you know. And you see it's a problem for some people. They sort of grind the gears because they can't quite get the vibe of their new team. And finding a way to sort of, you know, get into that quickly is a good way to do it. And I think it goes for anybody, whether you're an engineer or a manager as well. Jump in, find some grungy tasks, and hop on those. And, you know, not only will people be glad to help you get those done, but they'll be thankful that you got those done as well.
I was going to say, at the same time, you need to be careful not to do the hero thing, which I think Fitz mentioned before. You know, I'm going to show everybody how awesome I am, and you go off and you try to engineer some gigantic solution to a tiny problem, right? It's something I've seen before, right? Or whatever the case, right? It's sort of like, you know, have some humility and don't try to solve everything yourself. You know, like assume you're still in a state of learning, right? And your job is to contribute while learning, not to show off how you can do everything yourself.
Yeah, I think it was pretty easy at Google because I came here assuming that I wasn't fit to take out most people's garbage. You know, I'm like, okay, so, you know. There isn't any like posturing here or anything. It's just like I got a ton of stuff to learn. There's a million super smart people around here, and let's get cranking. Let's see what we can do. And you know, it was great because I got to learn so much. I got to work with all these great people. We wound up, you know, writing some great software. And so I think that's just like it's incredibly empowering, but it feels great to be able to pick that stuff up. I mean, I think most of the engineers I know at Google are constantly in a state of learning. Like we have tech talks, and we have our systems reading group every Friday, where a bunch of us getting together in a room, we read a paper and we discuss it. You know, and like you don't do that if you don't love, you know, engineering. We had there's a little bit of a talk about this in my Plus stream. You know, the video that you posted, Jeff, where we talked about a little bit about, you know, if we look for people who aren't just working 9 to 5. We're not saying we're looking at people that work 600 hours a week. We're looking at people who love what they do, right? And the most of the people here that we work with love engineering. It's a vocation. It's not like a job. And if it's just like, you know, a way to earn a paycheck for you, you're at a disadvantage from the get-go, really. Yeah,
I think that passion, right? I mean, that's you know, a lot of what we're talking about here sort of vibes back to like loving this stuff. And you don't have to love it 24/7, you know, no. But really being into it. And
well, no, I would disagree with that. I would say
you
have to love it 24/7, but you don't have to like it 24/7.
Or do it 24/7.
But that is sort of a litmus test. Often when I'm interviewing people, I'd say to myself, you know, if this person were a billionaire and didn't have to work at all for a living, would they still be fooling around on a computer just for fun? Right? Would they be programming or building things or whatever? Like
tinkering.
That's the kind of person you wanna hire.
Yeah, totally agree.
Everybody has that bug at Google for sure.
Yeah, it's a funny point, man. I mean, I think about, you know, helping people outside of work that are trying to get a new job and that, you know, don't know how to network. And I like, you know, spend hours talking about networking. It's like, God, this is just what I like to do. It's kind of scary, I guess. But anyway, I'll digress from that topic. So, all right. So show up, be on time, don't fail out of school, immerse yourself, communicate.
To the networking thing, don't be afraid. So networking always turned me off, right? The sort of like, let's go schmooze with people and just like get your name out and get a bunch of names that you can call people and ask for jobs. I mean, and I think it has that effect on a lot of engineers. But if you look at it from a different angle, and you can call it something different if you want, but look at it from the point of view of you're finding other people who are interested in similar things, and you're getting to know other people in your field, you're going to get to know other people that do that sort of thing. We do that a lot here in Chicago with other engineers at other companies, not just who work here at Google. It's like, oh my God, let's go talk to this guy. Ben's building some like ham radio interface for his Arduino for his Android phone or whatever not, and I'm like, and I'm tinkering over here doing this type of thing, and let's go over to the other company over there and talk to those guys and see what they're doing in their spare time.
It's like having play dates for engineers, instead of, but you're not.
But you don't have to ask your mom. Yeah.
You're not trading business cards. You're just collaborating. I mean, and honestly, stuff like working on things like open source projects has an effect of networking unintentionally, right? You get in there because it's fascinating or it's scratching an itch, but you end up meeting a bunch of engineers who have sort of become virtual coworkers. And I have to say, I have seen a huge number of people recruited and hired for jobs because of people they knew through open source projects. Hey, I heard your company's hiring. Can I apply over there? Oh yeah, sure. We've been working together for months now. Let me get you a recruiter. So it's very, very useful.
Well, I mean, that was you recruited me to work.
So I got you.
Because I was working on open source stuff in my spare time, and and we were both recruited through somebody else to come work at Google. So it's sort of how it works. That was unwittingly a form of networking, right?
Yeah.
But instead of sitting around schmoozing, drinking watered down drinks, we were all writing software.
Should I start like the Dr. Evil audio here? Sorry, it's like. Just kidding. So we've only got a few minutes left. Would love to just sort of hear, I haven't talked to you guys in ages, I feels like. Would just love to hear sort of what a day in the life in Chicago is like now, just for people that, have seen you guys' videos and seen your open source work, just to sort of get a vibe for, what's going on in Chicago? What are you guys doing? Plus, I want to know, so it's totally self-serving.
Ben, you want to start?
Sure. Well, it's interesting. Both Fitz and I started out in open source at Google, working on Google Code, the project hosting service on Google Code. As we said earlier, over the years we sort of transitioned from being engineers to being engineer leaders to being engineering managers, and now actually I'm actually working on an advertising project. We have at least 7 projects now in the Chicago office.
Yeah.
I'm working on an advertising product, which is very interesting. To be honest, I was a little bit about a year ago when I started, I was a little tentative about switching because I thought, well, open source, it's what I've been doing forever. I'm really interested in tools and compilers and things like that. And, do I really want to go work on ads, right? It sounds kind of dry, right? I know it makes money, but, and I have to be honest, when I got over to this new project, it's the same computer science problems that you deal with in any project, right? And it's really fun. And I'm now managing a whole team of engineers who are very motivated and very excited to work with. So
awesome.
I spend my days basically figuring out what everybody's working on, and sort of, I talk about it, the analogy I give is like there's a really big boat full of people moving in a direction, and my job every day is to like talk to them all and then like steer the wheel 1 inch to the left, right? And then see what the ramifications are the next day, right?
Next year we're going to replace you with a shell script.
Exactly. But it's interesting, like, when I left on vacation for a week and I came back, I could tell the boat had drifted off course a little, right? It's noticeable. So I'm like, oh, all right. It's interesting, very interesting job. But Fitz, you've got the I think the projects that at least are much more interesting to talk about in the public, right?
Well, I do, yeah.
Exciting, politically charged.
I'm really, really excited about the stuff I'm doing. So we started the Data Liberation Front here in Chicago, back in 2007. There's our awesome logo at dataliberation.org. We make great coffee mugs. We also have bottle openers. Jeff, I sent you one of these bottle openers.
Yeah, it's in my wallet. Totally.
Exactly where it belongs because it's super thin. So we started basically working to make it easier for users to take their data in and out of Google. It's a way of sort of shaking loose data that's getting stuck in Google and other companies. Although we're not working with other companies, I think by leading by example, we're starting to see people follow, and it's a way of keeping ourselves on the ball, I'd say. So how do we keep you? Well, we keep you by innovating and making our products better, not by artificially locking your data in. So that's been really exciting. And last year when Google Plus launched, we launched Google Takeout, which you can use to download, which at the time you could use to download all of your social stuff. So that included all of your circles and your contacts and your photos and all that sort of stuff. And then we've continued to add things to it. We added +1s to it of sites that you've +1'd, and we've added Google Voice to it. And we've been working really hard to get some other stuff in. And we can't talk about what's coming in the future, but keep your eyes peeled. And about a year ago, I started another team called the Transparency Engineering Team that had actually started through some 20% engineers. And these 20% guys basically were really passionate about free speech and freedom of expression on the web. And so they took a whole bunch of Google traffic data on a per-country basis and published it to show when countries are doing bad things, like shutting off the internet in Egypt, for example. So I formed a full-time engineering team around that, and we improved these products. So these traffic graphs, which you can see at google.com/transparency report, it's all one word, or just use your favorite search engine, search for transparency report. And we had these graphs, and they were 35 hours delayed for technical reasons, that we were making sure that everything was just in a row. And so this team worked really hard, not me, the engineers did, to get that down to an hour, and then down to 2 minutes. So it's almost real-time graphs if you go and look at this. So if some country shuts off the web, the internet or something, or any one of our products, you'll be able to go there and those graphs and see it really quickly. So that's been really exciting. I mean, and then we have the government request site, which shows when governments ask for data about our users, and also shows when governments ask us to take data down. And that's actually been affecting change. Like members of parliament in various countries, in the UK, in India, and other places, have used this as an example of why they need to be more transparent, why they need to do a better job when trying to be more careful when trying to get data from companies. So, I really think that we're a small team of engineers. We're under a dozen engineers, but I think we're changing the world over here, and it's super exciting. So I do a little bit of steering the ship, but these guys are on little speedboats, and they know right where they're going. I do a lot of talking around the company, because we're dealing with all of Google's products. So it's a particularly tricky challenge, I think. And I go around the world and talk to a lot of governments and folks about what we do, and sort of explain why we do it. We do this stuff not because we're nice, although the three of us at least are nice.
We're very nice.
We do it because it's good for our business, and so it's a pretty awesome place to be.
It's fantastic. Now, Fitz, I love the takeout stuff as a recruiter, that I can pull all my stuff out. Shameless, but I love it. It can take it all out. It's just awesome.
It's all about trust.
That's right. It's great. So we're just about at end of our time together, or at least live on air.
Oh, come on.
We can talk for as long as you guys want.
Heck of a way to announce you're leaving.
Unless you yeah, right. Unless for some reason I get shut off. But just sort of wrapping up with you guys, wanted to just sort of, if you could say 3 things to people joining your team, joining the workforce, sort of, what do you got? Ben, I'm going to put you on the spot because you look like you're thinking really hard.
3 things. What's the question? Say 3 things.
3 quick tips to people joining. You're totally stalling. 3 quick tips for people that are, transitioning from school to the team.
Be ready to learn. Be ready to work in a team, and be ready to show people you care.
Yeah,
awesome. That's great.
I'm gonna say that Ben took all 3 of mine. No, I'm kidding. I'm gonna say that one of the trickiest things to do as an engineer is to respect people who are good at their jobs when it's not an engineering job. And that's what Google has taught me more than anything else. We have salespeople here that are brilliant salespeople. We have recruiters here who are amazing recruiters. And just
PR
people in PR and marketing who are just really good at their jobs, and they're just really good people. Here's one of the things that blew me away: legal. Guys I work with the legal teams here are just amazing. They blow my mind. They're so awesome. They give lawyers a good name. They really do. So that's probably the most important thing. I'd say that counts for 2. Really, tips. The other one is I would say is just totally keep learning. I don't know. It's really hard to be put on the spot. 3 tips.
This is what I do.
I would say I'm not going to say don't settle. But don't stop looking. Right. So go for a job, give it your best, see how it goes, And if it's not what you want, keep looking for something else. But don't just sit around and expect someone to show up one day and give you your dream job. You got to work for it. The last thing is, and this is, I think, one of my favorite things to say, is remember that you don't deserve any job. Okay? I don't think I deserve this job at all. You have to earn it. I come in every day, and I earn the right to stand here or sit here. I have a sit-stand desk. With these engineers around me, because they're freaking awesome. I'm not saying that just because they're sitting around me. So don't expect it. Don't think that you deserve anything. Work for it, because you'll be pleasantly surprised as opposed to disappointed.
Yeah, no, I think those are great points, and I'll just rehash the one that you guys both mentioned earlier about be willing to roll up your sleeves and do that dirty work. Prove to everybody on the team that you can get something tough done and that you care about it. I think those are all really great points. So like I said, we're just about done. Again, for the 15th time, I want to thank you guys for joining. This is a Recruiter Tips and Tricks Hangout on the Air live with Ben and Fitz from Chicago. And again, totally appreciate you guys coming on, and hopefully we can get you on again to talk about your secret projects that hopefully you guys will have done soon. I'm totally beating around the bush. If you can talk about what you're working on.
You mean it's not secret?
It's not secret at all.
Let's talk about it.
Talk about the book?
Yeah, let's talk about it.
That's not secret.
Yeah.
Before
we go on, I want to know, what does the reindeer button on my screen do? I've never done a Hangout on Air before.
I'll do it.
Okay.
The what?
There's a reindeer button, and I'm really confused. Is it going to turn me into a reindeer?
Oh, there is a reindeer. What on earth?
Dude.
Okay.
Okay, this is so awesome.
There used to be a mustache button, but it went away.
That was for November.
Yeah, it's a little confused by my headset, I think.
Oh my
Maybe I got to come in here a little
gracious.
bit.
This is quite
No.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Okay. All right. This is turning us screwing around on.
Very seriously. So Fitz and I have been speaking at conferences for 5 or 6 years now.
Talk with the lab coats.
Yeah, that's right. The lab coats. Google.
Nice lab coat, Jeff.
I just stole mine from an engineer that won one. But whatever.
We originally started going to open source conferences and Python conferences and things, and then eventually Google I/O. And we sort of thought that it would be interesting to give talks that weren't necessarily technical, but more about social issues, right?
Yeah.
They started as comedic talks, like how not to run a community, right? Or how not to use Subversion, and then it mainly became like, how do you protect your project from jerks, right? And what essentially happened is we started getting bigger and bigger crowds because people all had the same sort of issues in working in a team. So it sort of turned into like Ben and Fitz's yearly group therapy talk, right? But it was good. It was a lot of fun.
Pretty true.
And I need to come to the next one.
We'd come back every year with a new talk about some kind of social issues around collaborative team programming. And eventually, our editor at O'Reilly said, "Hey, who we worked with before on the Subversion book and other things." She's like, "Look, you've got all these talks. This could be a new book." I'm like, yeah, you're right. We should write these ideas down into a book about how to collaborate on a team, how to do. I don't know. We haven't quite chosen a name for the book yet, but it's going to be about software as a team sport, essentially. That's the theme.
You spend all this time in university learning about software engineering and computer science, and there are no classes on how to work with other human beings. I've talked to a million professors about this, and their response is always the same. Oh, sure, we do group projects. I'm like, you mean the projects where you assign something to two people and one of them does all the work and the other one does nothing? Yeah, that sounds like a great learning experience. That's an experience of patience and how to not, like, you just say, he didn't do anything, oh, he didn't do anything, etc. So, this is sort of a way of codifying a lot of that and telling it through stories and anecdotes of things that we've done and we've seen. So, I think it's a real challenge. I think it's one of the most important things. We've met I wouldn't say tons. We've met a number of brilliant engineers that just can't interface with humans. Like, give them a compiler, they can hang out all day long. Give them a human being, and they're just utterly lost.
But I think that's probably the piece of wisdom that we're trying to communicate most of all, is that to be successful in software engineering, it's not just about knowing the latest programming language or the latest tool. It really is about learning to collaborate, which is a skill you have to learn, but it's not something you should poo-poo or look down upon or just assume you'll figure it out, in your first 2 months.
And I think people see like famous engineers or famous people who run famous projects or something like that. They use them as role models. But like the people that are I think are most amazing, like here at Google, are engineers who are leaders and who are not only brilliant engineers, but they have the knack for bringing people to consensus. Okay, it's not just like I'm going to order all you guys to do this because you work for me or whatever. Not. It's like, hey, I've got this idea, I've got this vision for this product, and we're going to do this, and let's get it done. And people buy into that. So there's a lot of persuasion going on. There's a lot of these sort of tricky soft skills that. Because people are so people are basically a giant collection of intermittent bugs, which makes most engineers crazy, right? Because you walk in one day, you tell your compiler hi, and your compiler always say hi back, right? You walk in to the person next to you, say hi, they'll say hi one day, the next day they're like hi, because they had a bad night, or they'll just snort at you or throw something at you, or whatever, So that unpredictability can be very frustrating, especially when you're looking for that sort of lockstep logic that you're used to dealing with, technology.
No, those are all. I mean, it's so true, right? And then we all work with a lot of people every day, right? It's sort of part of the deal. So
So we got to finish writing this book at some point, which would be awesome.
We're very close. Very close.
We're almost there, and then we'll hopefully have it out this summer, I think.
Awesome. Well, hopefully, once you guys are live, you can come back and we can do another one of these gong shows. So it'll be a lot of fun to chat with you guys in real
detail. I have a gong here, actually. I could go get a gong.
I'm waiting for someone to just turn off the internet in Jeff's office.
They may have already done that. Just
is that on the transparency
We're in our
report?
own private little internet right now, and everyone else is gone. There's no way to really tell. So.
Well,
thanks for having us, Jeff. It's been great.
Thanks for coming, guys.
Absolutely.
Really appreciate it. And I got to get to Chicago this summer.
Oh yeah, come for Taste of Chicago or something, or Blues Fest
Definitely.
or Jazz Fest or whatever.
It's not so pretty right now. It's a little cold right now.
Got 6 inches of snow coming tomorrow. Hang in there.
Awesome.
All right, guys. Thanks again.
Right. Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Later.
Is it over? I guess so.